Welcome to Showing Up Solo with Hannah and Nicole, your guides to navigating online marketing for your business. Welcome, everybody. Hannah and I would love to introduce Rachael Botfield. She is a fellow mompreneur, podcast manager from RBVA. Welcome, Rachael.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what kind of services you do?
So as Nicole said, I'm a podcast manager. I did start out as a virtual assistant, but I've kind of found my love for podcasting and niche down into that now. So I help business owners or solopreneurs with their podcasts. So some people have a podcast already and they just need some help with it because they're busy with their clients now and they just need the extra support. Or I can help people launching their podcasts. So they've just got an idea and they want to get some help having everything edited and sorted out for them and published, so they don't have to worry about that. So I just take everything away from you guys or for whoever's having the podcast and make it all nice and pretty for you and give it back.
Yeah. Full disclosure, Rachael is our podcast manager. She's also responsible for our videos. And we're so glad and lucky that we have you on board. So.
Oh, well, I'm really glad to be working with you both. I'm really excited. So it's very exciting to be on someone else's podcast as well. So
yeah, I've been a guest on Rachael's. Your podcast is the Virtually Inspiring podcast, right? So you're not just a manager, you're also a host.
I am, that's right. Yeah, I started that when I first started my business. I just thought I really wanted to do a podcast and then I wasn't quite sure what to do it on. And being new to the virtual assistant world, I just had this kind of world explode in front of me in the community. And I just wanted to do something to celebrate all the different VAs. So the aim of the podcast is just to bring stories and everyone's journeys to light, really, for people to either aspiring or new VAs or people that are looking, maybe they don't know what VAs are. I mean, I think pretty much at the moment with the pandemic, everyone knows what a virtual assistant is now. But I think when I first came across it, it was all really new to me. So it's just a great way to show how valuable and the range of skills that everybody has is just amazing. So that was and it's like monthly episodes now that talking to different people still. So you can catch that out there if you want to listen to it.
Yeah. A little self-disclosure for me. The first time I want to say I met you but didn't meet you was through your podcast when you were interviewing Hannah. So yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, Hannah was a great guest. You were really early on, I think. You were like episode 4 or 5, I think.
Yeah, I think it was pretty early on. Yeah. And that was I think that was my second ever podcast interview. So, and you were such a pro.
I was so nervous when I was interviewing people to start with, but like we were saying earlier, it gets easier. And I think it's the same when you do video and do those kinds of things. It gets easier the more that you do. And sometimes at the beginning you think, oh, people are just saying that, but it really does get a lot easier and you become more natural. And then because you settle into what you're talking about, and if you're passionate about it and you really enjoying what you're doing, I think it really shows and comes through. So you will just settle into that role.
Well, I would say I never would have known in your interview with both of you that it was new for either of you. So kudos to both of you.
Or that my kids were on my lap the entire time.
Oh, bless them. I know. It was so early in the morning though, wasn't it? And it was so great of you to come on. They were very sweet. So it was fine.
Yeah, I think it was like 5 a.m. in the morning for me, which is why I'm glad it wasn't also like the video wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
But Rachael, we've got you here to talk about podcasts and really like, why do you think who are podcasts for and why do you think people should be making them? A lot of our audience are, one-woman shows, solopreneurs in the service industry. And they might be thinking, it's all well and good to have a podcast, but why is it relevant to me?
I think podcasts are relevant to everybody. There are so many different types of podcasts out there. And you can just I think if you've got engaging content and you've got this great idea, you can get that out there and you can touch so much more people as well. So sorry, I'm having a complete brain freeze.
Well, what is the purpose of a podcast for your business? I mean, I can understand the podcasts. I don't think it's a secret that my favorite podcast is My Dad Wrote a Porno, which is definitely purely for entertainment purposes. It is a hilarious show to listen to, but we're not talking about, just for fun. Obviously, that's something you can help people with. But today we want to talk about why it's important for a business. Which obviously, I mean, Nicole and I have an idea because we have one. But as the expert,
you can make your podcast directly for your audience. And the benefit of that is that you're talking straight to them. So once you have to, obviously there's a building your audience. So as a business owner, you will know who your ideal client is. And from your interactions from them with your social media, you're going to know their pain points and exactly what it is you can offer them as their transformation in their business, in that the service that you're providing. So that value can be taken into your long form content. You produce a podcast, whether it's weekly or monthly, whatever you feel that you want to produce it, much like a blog that you might produce. And a blog is a much more common thing that everybody knows about blogging, and they are still very valuable. There are lots of blogs out there, but that potentially wouldn't stop you from creating one. So the same with podcasting, that it is still relatively new. It's got a massive growth at the moment. The amount of podcasts compared to previous years, they've just grown, I think, by 150,000. But
wow.
Yeah, in the last year. So the amount of podcasts compared to blogs is something like 0.1% of podcasts compared to blogs. So you've still got a real niche there as well by doing a podcast, even though you can find so many podcasts, the comparison there. And then, we'll talk a little bit about repurposing that content as well. So it's not something that you just have to create and it's insular. That's one thing that you do. And I think it's a great way to cut through the noise. Potentially, it's an extra place that you're getting yourself out there on as well. You can increase your SEO as well with your podcast. I just think that somebody that listens to your podcast, they take you with them throughout their day, perhaps on their commute or when they're cooking. And it's just a really personal way for someone to absorb your value that you're giving out. So that's why I love podcasts. Every podcast I listen to, I get so much out of, whether it's a personal one, a funny one, or a business one. I get so much out of it, and I just love the fact that I can just take them anywhere and listen to them. And I just think that having that for your clients is just a really great thing to do.
Yeah. So in terms of someone who is, building or growing their business, what would be some benefits of using podcasts for marketing that you would suggest?
Well, like I mentioned before, you creating a large piece of content for the month or for the week, and you can then repurpose that content across the board for your marketing. So with a podcast, I'd recommend that you do show notes with them, which is just summing up of the show, including any key information and any useful resources, which you could then turn into a longer form to turn into a blog. If you wanted to do a blog, you can include it in your newsletter, depending on the subject of your podcast as well. So, for example, this podcast here, we've got 2 co-hosts and a guest. You can cut up parts of the video and or use the audio in something like an audiogram, which you can share on your social media to promote your podcast, which is something that you should be doing on a weekly basis, like telling everybody about your podcast and then you can also link to the different subjects that might come up. So for example, if you're a coach and you're offering services and you want to talk about mindset and things, you can use the content that you've already mentioned to turn around and use that for social media captions as well. So, for example, from this talk we're talking about now, you can break it down into, have you thought about turning your podcast into a blog? And that could be a social media post for you. So all of this, you don't have to keep thinking of new ideas and new things. You can take it all from your one piece of content of your podcast. Obviously, there's a lot of planning that goes into that you need to think about. But I think it's a really great form to use and then to use in the rest of your marketing plan.
I think that was a lot of the inspiration behind our show, wasn't it, Nicole? We were talking about, as many of you may or may not know, like Instagram favors video content now. So I started making a practice of showing up live, and Nicole, you and I were talking about starting to do a series. And then we thought, well, if we're going to do a series, let's not just put it on Instagram, let's get it on YouTube. And then if we're going to be making the video, we may as well make the podcast. So like, we really just have to do the content once and then put it in the magical hands of Rachael. But basically, like, we have video content, we have audio content, we can transcribe it and turn it into a blog fairly easily. And that's all your marketing material for a month from one recording, if you want to, you know?
Yeah. It's incredible because Rachael was just saying, all the different kind of opportunities you have in creating content. And I know, like, for myself, when I first started my business, it's like almost kind of going backwards. Like, you start with Instagram, and then I've started thinking like, okay, how can I create less, but still have more that comes out of it, And people don't talk about like YouTube and podcasts enough. Like, we know they're out there, but in terms of creating them, I don't know. I know for myself, I was kind of scared at first.
I don't know. Sorry, Rachael, I was just going to interrupt, but I don't know if I've mentioned this. I used to be on my university student radio as an actor. I was in their soap opera. But I remember, like, we had, like, my student university had, like, a whole radio station, like, with a recording thing and everything. And so my thought about doing, like, a podcast was, like, that level minimum, right? That it was hard to do and took a lot of experience and expertise and equipment and, like, Rachael, have you experienced that? Did you experience that before getting into the industry?
Yeah, so when I was at university many years ago, I did a media production degree. It was a media communications degree, but it had elements of production in there. So I did some radio programs as part of my course. I also developed a script and things like that. So also, it's that long ago that we were still using some analog equipment as well. So the analog equipment seemed a little bit more daunting than the digital equipment. So the digital stuff was just kind of starting to come out. So when I actually did my video editing, some of it was on analog as well. And that can be a bit daunting, especially when you go into a studio. And I don't know whether podcasts were really around then. So it was like early noughties really then. And a few years ago, it's like before podcasting started to explode. I mean, essentially, they are radio programs. That's where, like, BBC Sounds, a lot of theirs are radio programs, and they have extras now for the podcast because podcasts have got so popular. But I think that it can seem a bit daunting, and you think, I've got to get all this equipment. How am I going to get set up? And you really don't. I mean, that's kind of like bust a myth right there, that you don't have to have all of that stuff. I mean, you can just do it with your phone. You can literally put your AirPods in or, and record it on your phone. Even if you want to do video, everyone's videos on their phones are amazing these days. And they are perfectly capable of recording really good quality video and audio for you to put on YouTube and to get out there into the podcasting universe. So you can, if you obviously want to upgrade or you've got the money to buy some stuff, amazing, that's great, you can. But if that's a barrier for you to starting your podcast, is thinking, I've got to download all this software and pay all this stuff, you don't. You can just start with a phone and a mic and then progress from there. The more confident you get, or the more your business gets more money in, you get more clients, and you think, right, I want to invest a little bit more in this, then you can invest a little bit more in it. But, you know, don't let that be a barrier to you. If you've got a great idea for you to get content out to your audience, don't let that stop you.
I don't know about you both, but for me, when I first thought about doing a podcast, I was like, who would listen to me? Like, what do I have to say that someone would listen to me? And when you think about it, like, if you're creating posts that, you know, you're speaking to your ideal clients about, you know, I understand the problems that you're experiencing and hear how I can transform and solve that for you. You can translate that into a podcast, and even more so because you're having a conversation with someone else. So there's so much more depth to it. So it's interesting how your mind can kind of, you know, trick you into thinking that you don't have something to share with people.
I think once as well, as with a lot of things, once you start thinking about it and you've got one little nugget of an idea, it then kind of snowballs and develops and think, oh, I could actually, and I find that myself, it's that creative process, isn't it? You're thinking about something and then you get those ideas and it keeps rolling. So kind of when I was trying to come up with an idea when I wanted to be a podcast manager, I edited some podcasts for my friend who started her business, and I thought I'm loving coming back to my kind of media production roots. What can I do a podcast on that I can show people that my skills in? That was my main motivation for me to start the podcast. So I was trying to, you know, think of ideas, and that's when I thought about the VA one. And I was thinking, well, who, you know, there are some VA podcasts already out there. Who's going to want to listen, you know, to me talking about my journey or other people's journey? But then I thought, well, actually, I really enjoy listening to other people's journey. And when I started my business and I was looking at how other virtual assistants do it and what can I train myself on anything, and all these people that I've interviewed have been through that themselves, and they've also got a slightly different niche. They've gone down a slightly different route. They've got some amazing resources that they can share as well. So, and I thought, actually, yeah, people, I would want to listen to that, because that would have really helped me. So I think that there are plenty of things in your business that you can think of, interviewing people that your peers, interviewing other people in your industry, those kind of things. And the most amazing conversations can come from them, and they can be so helpful to people that are listening. And I think that sometimes we underestimate the power of those conversations, and people just being real and authentic about what they're talking about as well. That people do want to listen to that. That's what they want to hear. So, and then you can get some great tips and actionable points from that, which you can sum up and then use for your marketing as well from your podcast. So I think that they're just, as you can tell, I absolutely love them. I can't stop talking about them.
I couldn't tell. But actually, it's I also think we underestimate the value of what we have to say. Like Nicole was saying, as service providers, let's face it, the magic happens when people get on a call with us, when they speak to us, when they see the person that's going to be joining their team as a collaborative partner versus like, we're not products on a shelf, right? We're not toilet paper. we're like, and people, like, you know, people are always saying, oh, there's a million coaches out there, or there's a million VAs out there, or there's, you know, million whatever. But what every business doesn't have that your business has is you. And I've heard again and again from my clients that one of their favorite things is our monthly calls, where we like really hash it out and brainstorm. And that's what's nice about a podcast. It's what I find so exciting about creating the series, is that people can get a taste of that. They can get an experience of that. I mean, you should hear Nicole and I when we get started down the idea train, right? We could talk for hours. Sometimes we have to consciously say, okay, let's stop. We got to what? Yeah. We got to, you know.
And that's the great thing about the podcast, is that you can get your personality across to your clients, or your potential clients and your audience. It's just, is it the like, no, trust, and having an extra touch point as well for people to get to know you. And also, I think, like you're talking about Instagram having a lot of video content now, that is what they're pushing and doing video. But for example, maybe you don't want to do a video, you don't want to do a lot of video, but you can do podcasting. You don't have to do a video as well. You can do it and just have the audio. And then, like I mentioned a little bit earlier about audiograms, you can have a little audio clip. And I was suggesting to a client of mine that they weren't quite ready to do a podcast. But they were talking about, and I was trying to get them to do video. They're a little bit reluctant, just they'd not experienced it. But I kind of suggested, well, you can make up to a minute clip of an audiogram. Maybe you just share a little tip or an update, and you can design a really nice graphic to go with that, and then have a little bit of you speaking. So it's just getting a little bit of your personality and you out into the world to your audience. So that's what you can do from your podcast, I think, as well. And I think it will really help connecting with your audience and your ideal clients.
Yeah. Well, and there's a message that Hannah and I have heard from our clients is kind of that they're scared to show up on Instagram. And with video or podcast, when you're interviewing someone else, you feel more natural having a conversation with someone else. That showing up, you're not thinking and worrying about how you look. You're engaging in a conversation, so it feels more natural, and people can pick up on that rather than, on Instagram when you're making a reel, pointing and dancing. It feels so unnatural for a lot of people, and it can be really scary to kind of do that. So this is like a great opportunity to feel like yourself, and it comes across that way to other people as well.
Yeah, there's an intimacy, I think, with audio content, because it's just in your little ear, unless you're playing it like on speaker or whatever, but generally you've got it in your little headphone. It's like you're in on a conversation with someone, whether like it's just the host talking on their own or they're having a conversation with someone else, but it feels like you're in this private little space. There's an intimacy, I think, to audio content that you don't get with other content.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. Yeah, I think that you sometimes with video as well, depending on how long it is and what you're watching it on, you can get a bit distracted. Whereas when you're listening to something, you would tend to do something else while you're listening anyway. So you're sometimes less distracted. And it is all about stopping the scroll and things like that on there. And with podcasts, you get that they've chosen to listen to your episode they know how long it's going to be. They're going to they've chosen to do it. So I think that's a really great thing.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any tips or advice for business owners who don't yet have a podcast but are curious, tempted, a little intrigued?
I would say, so some things to consider and to think about before you're jumping in with your podcast. So we talked a little bit earlier about your ideal client. So making sure that your podcast is there for a reason, is for your clients, or the audience that you want to reach. So you have them in mind whilst you're making it, whilst you're thinking of the episodes. And some goals that you want to achieve. So what is the aim of having your podcast? Is it to build brand awareness? Is it to add value? Those are probably the best reasons to start your podcast. You're adding value to your audience. You're starting it, and some cases, especially with you guys being new at your business, you're building an audience as well. We don't have, some people that start podcasts already have a pretty secure following on social media they can bring with them to the podcast area. So you are building your audience. And I mean, podcasting is a long game. It's not a short game. Don't be concerned if you don't have hundreds of thousands of listeners. So for my podcast, I think I have about 280 listeners. But I have a couple of people that always send me messages saying they've listened to it, which is lovely. And there's one lady in particular, and I love that she still listens and tells me that she's been waiting for the episode. And that's just like really fantastic. And even when you, Nicole, said that you'd listened to one episode, I was like, I listened to Hannah's episode. And that's really great. And I think that if you know that you're reaching even one person, I think you've like achieved what you wanted to. You can count it as successful, because your message has got across to somebody, and that is the whole point of what you're trying to get somebody to engage with your podcast. So I wouldn't concentrate on vanity metrics kind of thing with those. So there is a lot of prepping to do. So thinking about what topics you'd like to cover or people you'd like to interview, having a little plan, thinking about how often you'd like to release your episode, how long you'd like your episodes to be, which they can be as long as or as short. I've been talking to a few people recently about micro podcasting, maybe having like 10 minutes. There's a few podcasts that I listen to, strategy ones, that are really great. She has like a really great tip and it's 10 minutes and then that's it. And that could be so useful to somebody who really wants to, and they can also binge a load of episodes as well if they really like them. So I really like the idea of micro podcasting as well. I think that could be great. So plan out your topics ahead of time, and then just make sure you've got all your promotion as well. You're thinking about how you can either repurpose or to get it out there to tell everybody about it. So just to have some of those things in place before you start kind of diving in and releasing the episodes.
Yeah, so it's not content for content's sake, obviously.
No, but that's generally what you try to stick to with your marketing anyway, is that like trying to not just post for the sake of posting and make you doing something that's going to resonate with people. So it's better to do, as I've heard you say many times, Hannah, which is what I definitely try and keep in mind when I'm thinking of just posting some fluff. Think, no, you need to post it for a reason, whether it's a personal one or whether it's something else. It still should have something that's going to really aim for your audience rather than just posting. And that should be what your podcast. But I guarantee you may be thinking, I don't have anything to talk about. There's nothing my audience wants to hear. If you just have some time and some space to mull it over, you will find something and you will be able to create something interesting. I spent maybe 6 weeks kind of thinking about what I wanted to do and doing a little bit of research, and slowly the kind of idea came together. So I think don't put too much pressure on yourself when you're trying to come up with an idea. Just give yourself a little bit of space. You don't have to. Sometimes when you've got an idea and you really want to get it done, you really want to do it straight away. But I think I definitely recommend just having a little bit of time to reflect and to make sure that you're going to hit the right notes. Because I think, as with anything, consistency is really one of the best things that you can do. So once you're deciding to go on your podcasting journeys, to commit to whether it's weekly or monthly, daily, if you're very ambitious and you've got a lot of time to do a daily podcast, is to then let your audience know when they can show up for you and then be consistent with that. So you need to kind of make sure that you've planned and prepped enough so that you can carry on and show up for your audience.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Hannah.
Go ahead, Nicole. Go ahead.
It really, like, that is a great message pretty much for your business, is, you know, like planning ahead, and really knowing your audience and connecting with them, and not posting to just post, and figuring out how you can continue to bring value for people, because that's what they want. Is they want to know that you have something that can either bring value to them in terms of fixing a problem for them or helping them understand something, but it has to do something for them.
Yeah. I think, Rachel, you've given us so much to think about. I mean, obviously, Nicole and I are on board with the whole podcast thing, but I think it's pretty hard to argue not to do one after everything you've said today. There's really, I don't think there's a good reason not to. It's a great...
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And so, before we go, do you want to let everyone know how they can get a hold of you or work with you if they're eager to start diving into the podcasting world?
Of course. I'm on LinkedIn as Rachael Botfield, podcast manager. So you can find me on there. That's where I mostly hang out. I also have a website, which is rb-va.com, and that's just got a little bit about me and about the packages that I can offer. You can also book in a discovery call with me if you'd like to ask any questions, or you're not sure where to start, I can help. So just if you go to my website, there's a book a call link there, so you'll be able to contact me that way. So I'm always happy to have a little chat and run through anything that you might want to talk about.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Rachael, for joining us today. And we look forward to, we can talk to you every month, but we hope we can bring you back for our audience again soon too. So.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Enjoyed this episode? Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future ones. Want more from Hannah and Nicole? Visit showingupsolo.com to join the Showing Up Solo membership or to inquire about working with us on your business.